Welcome to the Hollywood Raw YouTube page, guys. We're happy to have you here. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave us comments, do all the stuff.
What are you waiting for? Let's go. I got a drug addiction to feed.
Welcome to the Hollywood Raw podcast. My name is Adam Glyn. I am on the East Coast. On the West Coast, we have Dax Holt. We are two veteran celebrity journalists in the game for, you're longer than I am. 2 decades. I mean, we just feel good. I think we came into this business. I was actually having a conversation. A conversation with a friend before we started the podcast saying we got into the business during the heart of the entertainment news era. Would you say that, Dax Holt?
100%. Well, in my mind, yes, because 2007 for me was the height of all excitement. If you ask someone older than us, they're going to be like, no, old school Hollywood was the height of Hollywood. I mean, I think it depends on who you ask, but I feel like 2007 was like the ultimate peak of excitement in Hollywood.
Yeah, I would say during this generation was at its peak because when we started during our time in the industry, magazines during the beginning of our career were the biggest things out there, from the Us Weeklies to the People magazines were at the biggest they've ever been. That has actually switched where not too many people go through those magazines anymore. People aren't going to wait for Monday or whenever the magazines are going to drop. They're getting information sent to them. So we were started during when Us Weekly, when the magazines were huge, and then went into the Perez Hilton blog era, which has gone to the TMZ era, which is where we started. And now we're in this crazy like wild, wild west where
I feel like now we're in like the TikTok social media era. Like it isn't even just one single blog or website that garners all the news. It's like you go on TikTok for the news, you go on Instagram for the news, you go on social media to find out the big stories. You almost don't have to go to the websites anymore. It's crazy.
So yeah, we have a lot of experience. That's why I say we were there during the heart of it. And right now I just feel like we all, from content creators to consumers to media outlets, we're all trying to figure out what is going on. But we love it. We love this industry. We are on today's podcast. We have two people that love this industry, that have been a huge part of this industry. Chris Kirkpatrick from Nsync is on the podcast alongside his new podcast host, Bryan McFayden is on the podcast as well.
Which you know him from MTV during its legendary heydays of TRL, and oh my God, the guy had like literally the best gig ever. So watching them team up to do a podcast, I think is going to bring major nostalgia for some people. But we'll get them on to talk about their podcast, but also Chris Kirkpatrick's been all over the news with Nsync being like one of the biggest topics of the last 2 weeks, them coming out at the VMAs. I want to know, what was it like backstage? How did this all go down? What was it like? Is it Justin Timberlake who is calling them up to get them in the studio? What was the studio time like? I feel like I've got so many Nsync questions because it's been kind of on the top of everyone's list of exciting news for reunions and just entertainment news in general. So I'm excited to have them on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to Chris and hear about what's the latest with their group, what his night was like, the night where everyone found out that Nsync is coming together, talk to Bryan, as well as which celebrities were assholes and kind of what's going on with their podcast. Just have a fun conversation. We're friendly with these guys now, so it's kind of.
Well, we've had both of them on for solo episodes in the past. So if you want to listen to Chris, we had him on before. We've had Bryan on, who told us phenomenal behind the scenes MTV stories. But having them back right on the heels of this Nsync reunion excitement is really cool.
Dax, do you get starstruck from talking to these people on the podcast? Like a guy like Chris, who at one point was the biggest person, one of the biggest guys in the world. I mean, I know we're not in a studio. We're doing it over StreamYard, which is like a Skype. But like, are you, you're at the office. Are you telling people like, dude, I'm about to be on a Zoom call with Chris Kirkpatrick?
So I definitely get excited to talk to people. Don't get me wrong there. With Chris and Bryan, like we've seen them, we've known them for a couple of years now. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we've got some other guests that are lined up that we've never talked to that I am extremely excited to talk to. I'm not saying I'm not excited. I'm not
We're
bragging
friends.
to everyone. Yeah, we're friends. It's like they're buddies now.
It's kind of cool.
You know? But I
It's
know
kinda
that I
cool.
will go out there and I'll tell people like, oh yeah, just had Chris Kirkpatrick on the podcast, and they'll be like, oh my God.
So let me ask you this, Dax. Do you get weird when you tell people that you're about to have them on the podcast? Because part of you wants to be like, "This, how cool is this?" But the other part of you don't feel like you're name dropping.
Yes, 100%.
Which is
Like
the name of your podcast.
I left a meeting to come record right now, and I had that awkward moment of like, do I tell people like, hey, I'm having an Nsync member on, or do I just walk out? And I ended up walking out so I didn't look like a douche.
Yeah. No, I get it. I always get nervous about telling people who I'm about to talk to because I don't want to feel like I'm name dropping, but it is still cool to me. Like, I'm not trying to out alpha you or trying to show off. I'm like, dude, guess I'm excited. So before we get to them, we read your reviews. This is the best thing to do to support this podcast. Dax, do you have a review ready for us?
I got one. All right. This one comes from maybe P Rose.
Prosecco?
P Rose CC 007. It says May 5th podcast. I just choked on my tea. Do I have to F them or do they have to F me? Listened 3 times. I'm still laughing, and they gave us 5-star reviews. I remember this. Do you remember what this is referring to?
Yeah, you gave me F, Marry, Kill a few celebrities, but the thing was, it was male celebrities. Yeah, so I was like, it's a big difference. There's a big difference for men when you have to choose here an F, Marry, Kill because there's a lot of things that I don't know.
I'm glad that we brought some joy to P Rose CC 007 or Prosecco or whatever your name is. I wish you guys put your names. Like, write your comment and then put your name at the bottom so I can identify you as a name, not just a username. Anyway, I'm glad we brought some joy to your life. Adam brings joy to my life every day, makes me laugh like crazy. So I'm glad he does it for you guys as well. So thank you for taking the time and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Appreciate it mucho.
Oh, all right, Dax. Well, Dax, while you're still speaking, keep speaking and tell us about our guest today.
Oh, we've got 2 legendary people on the podcast today. We've got Chris Kirkpatrick from Nsync. You guys know him. You love him. 1/5 of one of the biggest boy bands of all time. And then Bryan McFayden, who, if you were like us, grew up watching MTV, loved TRL. He was one of the other main faces that you would see out there day in and day out, living my dream job. Bryan, Chris, welcome to the podcast, guys.
Bryan, Chris, thank you guys for coming on the podcast. You guys have your own podcast where we're going to get into that. Obviously, Chris, we're going to start with you. Nsync has taken over my algorithm lately. What has life been like you the last 2 weeks since the VMAs? There's a lot of speculation. What is it like for you in the last 2 weeks? Is your phone just going off the hook, or what's your world like?
I don't understand what happened. Was there like a no, it's been crazy. It's, my phone obviously has been going off the hook. I think anybody who was in a band and hasn't done anything for 23 years and then suddenly comes out with a new song, are going to get that kind of response. But it's been great. More importantly, I think it was great with the guys and hanging out and falling back into our old ways and just clowning around together and missing each other on that kind of level and not being around. We've been 5 individuals that have represented the band for 20 some years, and now to represent the band as the band again is a lot of fun.
How did it all come about? I mean, I think that's the big thing that I want to know. I'm like, I see you guys up on stage. The world is freaking out, but like, how does something like this after 20 some years actually get put together? Because people have been talking about an Nsync reunion for the last 20 years, and they've wanted it. It's been exciting. Everyone's craving for it. But how does that first call happen?
Well, there were a lot of little close calls or attempts or, things that all 5 of us at one point, hey, this is going on. What about this? And, and this one was Justin finishing up Trolls. And and going, I got this song for everybody. I'd love for everybody to get on it. And we did. And that's kind of how that kind of all started. And I'm not sure what I can talk about with the strike and everything. I just know that, the five of us getting back together has been great.
Yeah.
Was this the first time you guys?
I think it's been good for me too. It's like hanging out with like, you know how your friends get that nice new car and you're just like, you can't wait to get in it. If you're with somebody from Nsync, especially like Chris, it's like you have your head like hanging out the window for everyone to see. It's been cool. I've been enjoying the ride with them.
I could imagine. Great publicity for a new podcast that's
oh my God.
At the same time. It's unbelievable.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you guys keep it quiet too? That was my other thing. Like you come out in an award show. Obviously the VMAs is one of the most talked about shows, or at least this year was unbelievable. How do you stay quiet backstage? How do they keep you guys from that news leaking?
There were hints here and there, and a lot of the fans kind of assumed something. It was crazy. I think I got into New York on a Saturday or Sunday maybe, and the VMAs were on a Tuesday. And as soon as I landed, all the socials, I was blowing up. Like, we spotted JC on a plane headed in, and Joey's spotted in New York. Lance is spotted in New York. We know Justin's at this thing. All the guys are in New York. So we've got some fans that have been really excited about, us doing something or keeping on top of that stuff. So anytime the five of us are together in the same city, there's a lot of talk and they start to rumble. What are they doing? Why are they all there? And they knew the VMAs were coming up. So they kind of just assumed that that's where we'd be. But other than that, we all kept it tight-lipped. I wanted to say some stuff so many times because nobody knew I was there. And I was like, what? like I kind of felt like an idiot. I was like, am I just not going out to the right places? But I kind of just hid. So that's probably why.
Bryan, were you there, by the way? I mean, you've got your MTV history. I didn't know if this was something that you were like, I want to be a part of this.
No, I was in Minnesota hanging out with my pops. He having some health issues. But it's kind of interesting too, because I'm hanging out with a 77-year-old man. We're watching the VMAs as it's happening. It's like, I think he fangirled the hell out of Nsync, and seeing Chris out there too. He's like, oh, but no, it's pretty cool. I think just because of from my MTV experience, to see your buddies go out on stage for the first time in many years and having basically the whole world watching, it was just I don't know. I knew it was going to be huge. I just didn't know it was going to be that huge. And the question always is like, are they getting back together? And you're not going to hear any answers, but that's what we're all wanting and waiting. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that was just that experience, and seeing those guys go across, seeing your buddy Chris go across. I'm like, I couldn't have been more proud of a friend. You just want the best for all your friends, but seeing something like that on a stage on that platform was pretty special.
I think it's kind of a cool homage too to the whole 90s, early 2000s that, it was on the VMAs, and, that's the last time we'd ever really done anything together was, back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And just that whole era, everybody from that era realizes that right before we walked out, I was me and JC were on one side, and I looked at JC and I said, do you think they're going to remember us? But what I meant was, is do you think they're going to accept us? Because I kind of figured they'd remember us, but I didn't know if we'd walk out and they'd be like, oh, these guys suck. Their boy bands they all look like they're 90 years old and all that. So it was more of, I said, will they remember us? But I meant in a good way, because, and it's just a throwback. It's everybody from that era sitting there going, man, this is us. This is us up there on stage being accepted by this whole new generation of kids.
There's something else I want to add too. When I'm watching it with this 70, basically a geriatric, watching with Pops, he thought Taylor Swift was one of the wives because she was freaking out so hard. So, I had to explain that that's the biggest pop star in the entire world, and she's fangirling over Nsync. And if that's not an endorsement, I don't know what is.
She's fangirling over the Kansas City Chiefs now.
Yeah, right, dude. Come on. Well, actually, Chris, I was going to say, Taylor was probably one of the biggest names at the VMAs. Did you get to go up there? Did she come up to you guys backstage? Did you guys have? Well, besides that, was there any interaction besides on stage between you and her?
We were in and out, so we didn't really stay for much of anything. But as we were walking out and the whole way in the back, because she had to be out front because, I think she was up for every award that night because it's Taylor Swift and she's amazing. But when we were walking back, and it was honestly like genuine because she kept looking at us. What are you guys doing? I have to know right now. Like even when the cameras weren't following, we were backstage. She was like, you guys better let me know. Like, tell me what you're doing right now. And it was just kind of really flattering because she really, between her and probably Beyonce, the two of them own the planet right now and they can't do any wrong. And they're just, amazing artists, amazing talents. And for her to be like that to us was just, mind blowing. And it was like, yeah, but you're Taylor Swift. I mean, my son loves Taylor Swift. It's my son doesn't even know, except for when people come up to me, he doesn't know that I ever did anything. And he goes, why was Taylor Swift making such a big deal? And I was like, I don't know, to be honest.
That's awesome. Does she ask for a picture backstage or does anything like any of that go down?
No, it didn't get that weird.
But I always wonder, because if she's a super fan, I got to imagine she goes, can I get a photo with you guys?
Yeah,
I think that'd be amazing.
We've had opportunities before with her, and I know there will be, more opportunities to come. So, we would have got a picture with her. Are you kidding me?
Is that
it? Well, actually, so this past week, we find out that Usher is doing the halftime show. I think a lot of people thought when they saw Nsync at the MTV VMAs that Nsync would possibly do the halftime show. Was there any discussion with you guys internally, or did you get any calls about doing the halftime show for the Super Bowl?
No, I think that was just a rumor. That was I think people were trying to manifest that into being because that was never even on the table. We never discussed that. There's a whole other crazy plan of, what we're doing, what we're not doing, or what's possibilities with all that stuff. So, that was never discussed. I think that was just, like I said, people manifesting it.
Now, when you guys got back in studio, was it like just jumping right back in, like no time had passed, or what was that like, that moment when you guys are like, holy shit, this is actually happening?
And actually, were you guys all together, or were you guys in all different parts of the country and you send in your vocals? How did that all come together?
No, we actually, we recorded that, a while ago. I think it was back in March. We recorded some music back in March, and we went in, each of us one at a time, but we all went in. Like everybody, when Lance was in, I was there. When Joey was in, me and Lance were there. When JC is the only one that kind of snuck in early, to do his stuff. When I was there, I think Lance was there. So, and of course Justin was there the whole time. So there was a lot of us intermingling in there, and it was like old hat. We all have specific parts that we know we do. In every song, it's like we've got our range, and we went in, laid the song down, and I think we clowned around more than we recorded, so it worked out great.
Now, Bryan, do you go, can I join in on this?
What's interesting is
you can't sing.
No, but I would be like, can I just be a part of it? I just want to sit and watch this go down.
That's a great question. Just to answer this real quick, Chris, we harmonize well together now.
No, we do not.
The beginning was a little shaky.
We don't harmonize at all. You have two people have to. You just sing, and I harmonize with you. We don't harmonize together.
I bought us a pitch pipe so we could be on key together, whatever you want to call it. And I got to tell you, the improvements that I've made since the 8th grade, pretty good. No, I think as a friend, like I don't know how he was able to keep quiet for so long. I remember like going over to his house for barbecues or to hang out around the pool and with the family, and he couldn't say a word. He's just like I just remember one time I was in the kitchen with Chris, and he said to me, he goes, man, you have no idea. This is going to be huge. And I was thinking he was talking about the podcast. But it's just kudos to him. But when I found out that that's what was going on, I was like, oh my God. I was wondering if the lid was going to be blown off of everything. And you know, to Nsync's credit and to their team, no one really said anything until like the last couple of days. So it was like hearsay. Is this really going to happen? And then it finally happened. I was like, holy shit, this is pretty big.
That's Bryan, so cool. You know, you are a big part of MTV history, at least for me. You know, Chrissy, you as well. But Bryan, you had the job that I think every single young kid at home, every single young kid who almost wanted to be a broadcaster, they wanted your job. How is MTV? You know, I know a lot of jobs have changed over the years as far as presidents and people's roles in MTV have changed. But you being such a big part of MTV history, is MTV good to their alumni? Like, if you want to go to the VMAs, can you make a phone call and get tickets? Or how do they treat their fellow employees like you?
Oh boy.
On camera employees.
You know,
they're allowed to go on ridiculousness anytime they want.
Wait, they still have shows? Is that what's going on? I don't know. I mean, I can't really say that, you know, I've been invited to come back for anything other than like, I did stuff for the TRL reunion. But as far as the VMA is concerned, God, that would suck to get, you know, if I was like, you know, I really want to go to the VMAs and I'm alumni, maybe I could pick up the phone and make a call. I should be able to go. I should be able to get and like walk there. I haven't really done that. I can't speak for other people. No.
Chris, when
he's tearing up. You got his emotions again.
Well, I'm now hanging out with arguably the greatest boy band of all time, and I got to be with the fifth member of Nsync. So maybe next year I can.
I'm the first member of Nsync, bro.
Yeah, he's the originator.
I wasn't talking about. I was talking about Lance.
I love it. How long have you guys known each other, by the way?
Long time.
Yeah, you know,
are we going back to like TRL days? Is that when you guys first met, or? Okay.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was like we were bromancing from afar.
Mm-hmm.
It was cool because like the Nsync to me, those guys were like the fun guys from like out of all the groups that were around that time, that era, because everyone was so close to age. But those guys like seemed like they and I'm not talking about the other boy bands or the other pop groups or anything like that, but these guys seemed like they were like brothers, and they were easy to hang around, and they all like to do the same thing. So it was a lot of fun to hang out with the guys from Nsync for sure. But when we met was at the TRL class of '99 photo shoot. And I was just this baby like news guy with frosted tips, and I was like walking into like TRL heaven. You know, you see Lenny Kravitz, you got everyone from Nsync, you've got ding, Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Goo Goo Dolls, Limp Bizkit, Tyrese, Destiny's Child. Tell me if I'm leaving anyone out. It was
you left out Jesus.
Well, I did say Goo Goo Dolls, but it was like, so I got to see these guys. I got to hang out with them, and Jennifer Lopez, P Diddy. But I remember hanging out with the boys, talking to them, and I was nervous as can be because I was like, what? How am I here? Am I a contest winner? This is so weird. And behind us, this is when you know that this band is one of the biggest bands of all time. You know, Nsync was fangirling over Jennifer Lopez, who was just right behind us. And I was just like, this is so surreal. Jennifer Lopez is right here. She's talking to P. Diddy. And I've got the guys from Nsync. Carson Daly comes over, and we're also, I'm like, this is gonna be a picture for life. And it's one of my favorite pictures that we all have together.
That definitely has to be one of those surreal moments where you're like, where the hell am I right now? How did I get here? You know, and then Chris, have you ever had one of those moments where you look around and you're like, how did I get in this room, or how did our band become this popular that I am here right now? Did you ever have one of those moments?
Every day I wake up in the morning, every day I look out, you know, it's one of those things that where I came from, this wasn't supposed to happen to kids like me, or, you know, you don't, this wasn't even winning the lottery. Like, my wife likes to buy scratch off tickets, and I tell her to stop because we don't, you know, we already won the lottery. You know, this was a lottery that you can't even win. Like, this was just so unbelievable. Our fans are amazing. You know, it's been more than amazing to be with those four guys, and you know, like Bryan said, we do clown around like we're brothers because we basically are brothers. You know, we've all grown up together. We've all got to do some crazy stuff together. We've all made jokes. We've learned life experiences together and how we deal with them. So, you know, to be around those guys every day, it's a pinch myself moment.
But Chris, I need you to name drop right now. Tell me the most surreal room you've been in with the coolest celebrities.
I think that one of the most surreal times I ever had wasn't that long ago. I think it was 2015, maybe. We did the SNL's 40th anniversary special, and my wife and I went up to New York. And when we walked in, the whole audience was anyone who's ever performed or hosted or been a cast member of SNL. So, you know, you're sitting there and your neck is just breaking the entire time because it's a who's who. It's a Comic-Con of all Comic-Cons. It's like, it's just unbelievable when you look around and who you're sitting next to and who's in front of you and who's behind you. And then, of course, the after party, I think Taylor Swift got up, Prince got up and sang, and Jay-Z and Beyonce showed up later, and you're at the bar with Dan Aykroyd, you know, Chevy Chase. All these guys are all there, and there was, you know, except for maybe the servers and the bartenders, everybody in that entire place was famous, and it was just so mind-blowing and hard to, you know, it was almost like I was like, I gotta wake up from this. This is getting really weird right now. But it was definitely probably the most surreal moment I've ever had.
Do you remember who you sat next to in the audience that night?
I think I'm not sure if JC was there, so I think it was me, Joey, and Lance, and Justin I think was doing some stuff for the show still, so he was running around there. But I know there was we had who was around there? I think MC Hammer was right there.
Wow.
The Fly, Goldblum, Jeff Goldblum, was there.
The Fly. I love they said The Fly.
We had a lot of the cast members, but there were so many people. They actually had an overflow audience into Seth Meyers'
his studio.
Yeah, so there were people in there, and that was like a list of people too. So it was just it was unbelievable.
Do you, Chris, it sounds weird, and Bryan, I want to know, you know, as far as people in your phone book, and Chris, so when you get a text message, just say from Justin, there's a little part about you, if someone's in like, guys, look who just texted me, Justin Timberlake, or does that, like, because Justin, he is a star, you know, like Justin, not just music, but he got into film, and he's made some really good business moves, but do you get a little bit, not starstruck, but it's like, holy shit, like you're more careful with that text message back than you are with the average person?
Absolutely not. No, that you know, it's there are some people in my phone that if they text me, I'm like, oh, I gotta, you know, this person just texted me, I gotta, you know, be careful. Those ones, not with Justin, not with the guys. It was never, you know, it's been amazing to watch him on everything, and those are moments where I'm like, wait, that's Justin, you know. But I mean, I've known him since he was like 12, 13 years old. And, you know, I've always been like a big brother, and he's always been like my little brother. So I feel like I can get away with a lot more than anyone else. And I say what's on my mind. And sometimes, you know, people get offended. But I mean, him and I get into fights. We got into a fight one night in the studio, and it was just an argument. And the next day it was all squashed and everything was back to normal because, you know, they are your brothers. They are. It's never been I think it was more of being shocked that he was being this big, like being in movies, making all these records now, hosting certain things, or being on SNL or whatever it was. You know, those were the moments that I'm like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But if he calls me, it's just, you know, it's him. Or if he texts me, it's him. So it's like, if we don't talk for a week, 2 weeks later, it's like, we didn't skip a day. So there's never been any kid gloves or anything with his text, but there are people on my phone that I do definitely go, oh, be careful what you say, or let me text them back, or hey, look who texts me.
Who's the most famous person you got in your phone?
Bryan McFayden.
The Sir Bryan.
The Bryan.
From there, it just goes down to B-list MTV people.
What?
Actually, Bryan,
I'm on right now with Chris Kirkpatrick from Nsync.
Bryan, let me ask you this. I have a question for both people. I want to start with you, Bryan. What was your most embarrassing moment that ever happened in front of a celebrity? Have you had, especially you hosting some stuff? I'm sure you've asked someone maybe a question they weren't really appreciative of.
I don't know if it was embarrassing. Because I was worried that they were able to see it. It's the first time I ever hosted TRL, and Carson was in LA, New York, and you remember how the Times Square studios were with that big window, and there was this band called Nsync coming on. And I don't think I've ever been more scared or frightened in my entire life. And I couldn't stop shaking from the moment that they came to my office on the 23rd floor at MTV saying, hey, you're up, kid. And I left MTV News to go to do TRL. And this was the biggest band at the time. Well, I knew it so much. I think Mayor Giuliani cleared out. This is when you were able to drive through Times Square. He cleared out Times Square so thousands and thousands of kids could be in the studio or outside the studio. And as soon as I went on stage to just do rehearsal, you could feel the whole floor shake because of all the kids that were outside. And so I'm walking closer. And I'm hearing my IFB just during rehearsal, don't walk over to the window. It's going to scare you. And I walked over the window and I looked down. I was like, oh shit. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I thought I was going to have a panic attack. So you go through the hair and makeup and they're like, you okay? I get a phone call from Carson Daly basically telling me, he's like, hey, treat this. It was the best advice I've ever received from another host, especially for a show that big and the most iconic show ever at that time. And he goes, have a good time, pretend like the audience is your house and these are your friends coming in, and try not to suck. So I left, and then when I had Nsync come on, I couldn't stop shaking. So I was thinking the whole time that these guys are seeing to me, I look like, oh, that looks weird.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. You might not want to do that like that.
But I couldn't stop shaking, and I thought they all knew that I was that nervous. So what I did is I took the microphone and put it to my chest. And the whole entire time that they were in, I was just thinking that they could see my nerves.
Now, Chris, I remember during that time, how Bryan's explaining, where it's just massive crowds of people. Mm-hmm. Did you guys ever feel unsafe because of the pandemonium of fans and rushing you guys everywhere you would go? Was there ever a moment where you're just like, I don't feel comfortable?
We had really good security and we had good faith in them. But there's a lot of times when things would happen, especially different things at award shows or after parties or certain things where your security's not right there with you or sitting next to you or whatever. There's a lot of those opportunities, but for the most part, it was kind of, business as usual. We knew how to handle things. I think security a lot of times were there just to make us not look like the bad guy. If we had 100 people wanted an autograph or something saying, we don't have time for this for 100 people right now. And I don't want to do one or two, but yeah, for the most part, we always felt pretty secure and pretty safe. There was obviously a few times that didn't happen, but for the most part, security had us.
Getting to that point where you become so famous, and watching Chris with his fans, he's the same, if not better, with his fans. From the ultra famous person he was back in the late 90s to the early 2000s.
Because I'm old and fat now, I have to be.
Where is that? We did you're working out, man. Yeah. See your cheekbones.
Yeah, cool.
So we were doing a live show recently, and I watched Chris, and I was like, he's still with the same fan. And there's this long line for people to get his autograph and take pictures and stuff like that. But he was taking the time because that person came from wherever just to be with him. And it wasn't one of those meet and greets where Chris is getting paid. He just was, just out of his own time. And granted, he barely had any time. So I thought that was oh, okay, cool. There's some.
I'm cool, bro.
Yeah.
We
So-
You're pretty impressed.
Back to Chris, obviously you guys recorded a new song. Have you guys spoken since? Like, where does it stand now as far as the future of you guys making music together? I mean, you always say never say never, but I mean, does part of that feel like, based on the reaction you got from everything from the VMAs, are things leaning in that direction?
Things are leaning in a lot of directions. There's not futures that aren't signed or unsigned. So there's really, there's a lot of options. We've done a lot together, and we enjoy each other's company, and like we've said a million times, we do enjoy hanging out. So hanging out could be doing music. It could be just hanging out. This could be the start of us just taking trips every month together to, hang out again and and really get to enjoy our families and the intermingling in our families and talking kids and all that stuff. So, I wouldn't rule anything out, but the plans are kind of all tight to the chest right now, and we'll see where it goes.
That's a great answer.
That is a good answer.
He's answered that question 1,000 times since he stepped on stage.
Favorite question.
But he does it, and each answer is different. Like
at least I'm not being asked, is there any chance of a reunion? God,
Right?
that was beating a dead horse. Every time we do an interview, I'm just sitting there going, you can just ask it, get it out of the way.
And finally it happened. We waited 20 some years for it, and it happened. I love it.
There you go.
Was that moment when you guys walked out, were you pretty nervous, or you're used to being on a stage in front of tons and tons of people at this point, but this is a different stage, I feel, for you?
No, I mean, one thing I can tell you is when the five of us are together, there's no crowd too big, or there's no, we played Rock in Rio in front of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. We did the Super Bowl halftime. When I'm with those four guys, it changes your confidence. Like me going out by myself and doing some stuff. Sure, there's some shows where I'm like, "Ooh, this got a little nerves going here or something." Mm-hmm. But when I'm with the guys, it's business as usual.
And I got to know, backstage, you guys did a bunch of social media videos where you're like, having fun. Who is the one coordinating the videos?
That was actually the next day. We went into the record label, and, just kind of all of us coordinated. Lance is big on social medias. Justin's starting to get, his feet wet in social media. So there was a lot of, hey, we should do this too, and we should do this if, for promo for anything that we have going on.
So, but there wasn't like a third party that's like, hey, you guys, this would be fun to do. It's like you guys coming up with great social media content.
Yeah.
I love that.
It was great. We think it was kind of corny and dumb, but it's fun to do. I'm actually getting bigger on it now and having a blast. What's
interesting is I texted Chris about the moment that Lance and Chris were at the dressing rooms at Abercrombie. It was one of the funniest moments, because it was like, it took me back, not just, knowing Chris and Lance, but it took me back 20 years, because that's how goofy those guys were. They were always so playful, and they would do those bits, but cameras weren't on them when they were doing that. So this time it was kind of a nice throwback to that, and the fans, I know, ate that up.
Oh, of course. People are loving it.
Chris, I'm shocked you didn't even stay for the whole VMAs, which I'm not shocked, because I've heard stories nobody stays for the entire show. It's a long show, and it's a lot of work just to get out of there. If you stay the entire time, that means you'll never get out. Were you guys really just in and out? You guys did your thing and left? Because I think my friend has a bar in New York City, the White Horse Tavern. You guys went there afterwards?
Yep. Who's your friend?
my source.
Oh, you have a source, not a friend. Hold on a second.
I don't want to throw anybody. I don't want to throw anybody.
Nice to turn it around.
Yeah,
That's
I don't want to throw anybody.
Actually, I want to say the White Horse Tavern was a different night. Me, Joey, and Justin went out there. But we had a friend that had a restaurant too, right by the White Horse, and we went over there, and it was kind of like let's hang out. And because we didn't get a lot of time that day, and they wanted to keep us separated to keep it kind of quiet up until then. So that was kind of our opportunity to talk about everything, talk about what was going on, and eat some great food.
Yeah, White Horse. But you're at the White Horse Tavern. Aton runs a good spot there. And so you're there hanging out. As far as I know, there's no private rooms there. So when you're hanging out at a bar, are people seeing you guys? Are you afraid of people with their cell phones shooting you guys all together? What was going on?
No, well, when we were at the White Horse, it was only me, Joey, and Justin. And I
like how you say only. It doesn't matter. Any of you guys being together is like a big deal for the rest of us.
Yeah, well, I mean, of the band, only the three of us, not all five of us. But
the outgoes of the group.
We've got security, and security kind of sits right by, and gives you want to have your space. Like it's nice to, be back to normal and talk like a normal human being, and not have to worry about security guys sitting there listening to everything you say and saying this, that, and the other. But more importantly, if somebody comes up, they're like, hey, give them their space, or, so it was pretty easy to do.
Man,
it seems crazy to have security just standing around your table, but that's just a whole different level of fame that I can't even comprehend. But I mean, I get it. It makes sense. You don't want people up in your business every moment of the day.
Actually, speaking of partying, having drinks, this question is for, Bryan, I'm going to start with you. What was the coolest party you've been to? Not even I'm not talking about a frat party back in Nebraska. I want to know about like celebrity party. You're at this party.
Those were fun.
Wild thing. I'm sure it was. It's Nebraska. There's nothing else to do. But here's the thing.
It is my birthday on Sunday, so it's be nice. I think it was a lot of the MTV parties, like in New York, were a lot of fun, especially the after parties. SNL parties were a good time. But I think the most memorable party I ever went to was in Cannes. And I was dating Nikki Hilton at the time.
Ding.
And it was a who's who of a party. I mean, it was like every A-list star, like whoever was like big at that time was there at this party. And I remember when you could even look this up. I think it was like in all the tabloids. Melanie Griffith lost her wedding ring. I don't know if you guys remember this at all.
Shit.
And she lost it. She lost the diamond of her ring or something like that at this party. But because the party was just filled with celebrities, there was like no hanger on. It was literally all celebrities. Everyone was on their hands and knees looking for her ring. And I was like, this is so surreal. I got Johnny Lang, Sting was on stage, Ricky Martin. And then when they finally found it, we were all going to go eat. Bono comes up to me. And I'm like, oh my God, Bono knows who I am. This is unbelievable. I was one of my favorite artists of all time. I love you too. It was such a bucket list moment. He came up to me and started talking to me. And do you know, like the Peanuts, the sound of the mom on the phone?
Yeah.
I couldn't hear anything he was saying. Nothing was coming. I was just like, the whole time I kept thinking, Nikki, get out the disposable camera, take pictures, please, right now.
That's kind of a great point, because that's kind of what's cool about our podcast is we give celebrities and people the opportunity to tell stories like this. And you don't feel like, oh, I'm going to feel like an ass because I'm name dropping these people. Because, when you hear it, you're like, God, that sounds conceited, or you're telling stories. But those are the stories that people like to hear. It's those stories with other celebrities, the crazy, I lost my wedding ring, or whatever it is. And then, we just kind of make light of it and sit there and say, it's fine. We're giving you carte blanche to talk about other celebrities. Sure, we're going to ding a bell and call you out, but we want you to ding the bell. Like, we want to hear these stories. That's the fun of it.
I agree with you. I love those stories.
It's carte blanche for anyone to tell a story and drop a few names. That's the name of the game.
Well, I think in general, and Chris, Dax, Bryan, we all relate to this. Like, we're all fans. So there's always those moments that we have. And we go to a party, we go to an event, we're like, oh, you know who's over there? That's cool. And it's never like it's always, we're still just fans at the end of the day. So it never gets old. I'm never too cool to be at the party. I'm always the guy who's appreciative because, again, I never thought I'd be at the party. I never thought I'd be in the room. And once you're in the room, I think that's what kind of keeps you, it doesn't get you. I'm still not jaded. I still get excited when I'm in. Like this morning, I interview name drop Jeff Probst, the host of Survivor. Huge name.
Yeah, that's huge.
Dude, that guy looks great though. By the way, I think they're on like the season 42.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous.
I said to him, I was like, you have the best job in TV. Like everyone talks about these game show hosts, the Drew Carey. As soon as you get one of those jobs, you never leave those jobs because it's the best role. And I said, Jeff, you have one of those jobs that people don't really include your name in that list. He's like, you're right. I was like, yeah, you get to go to Fiji, twice a year for a month and you host a show. I mean, come on, how bad can it be?
And like, you don't have to survive, man. You're sitting in your hotel room. You come in on a boat and go, okay, survivors, here's what you're going to do today. See you later. I'm going to have steak.
He's eating well. He really has. I said to him, you have and he looks incredible. Like he just looks well rested. I don't know. And actually, this is a question for you, Chris. Who is the one celebrity, male-wise, when you've seen in person, maybe you saw him back in the day, we're like, man, this guy's in good shape. The one you're like, this guy has their shit together. Because I saw Jeff Probst this morning. The guy looks incredible. He's thin. He's healthy. He's vibrant. His skin. Is there one male celebrity you've seen in person? Like, man, this guy's a stud.
Man, we just interviewed him.
I was just gonna say that we just had him on. This guy's like, I can't believe he's what is he, 54?
Who is it?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Jonathan Schick.
Who? I didn't hear the name. Sorry, cut out. Who'd you say?
Oh, sorry, Jonathan Schick.
Okay.
Yeah. He is jacked.
Dude, he's huge. He's ripped.
Like he is so cut up, and he actually was giving me tips. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've got this nutritionist I'm going to get you with," and I'm like, "What about Bryan? Bryan's nutritionist. What about him? Like, right?" He's in incredible shape. Like he's a specimen for sure.
Guy's in his mid-50s and he looks like that. He's just like a Greek god. Yeah.
So what kind of guests are you guys having on Name Drop? Like, are we talking all types of celebrities? Like, what's your guest lineup?
That's it.
There's no ceiling. Do you want to take this one, Chris?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So there's no ceiling. It's the one thing that we're doing with Name Drop. We're not pigeonholing ourselves by just having our friends on from our era in the sun. So we're gonna have on everyone from like every genre. From
influencers,
actors,
race car drivers, anything.
Yeah. So it's just, if you're able to have these names that we want, because we want to hear these stories because they're so special. And a lot of times they get hidden because we don't want to sound like we're being braggadocious name dropping. But this is a show that we can actually do that and then, poke fun at ourselves for doing so anyway.
I love it. So the concept for someone who hasn't checked out your show is basically you're just getting people on, talk about stories, talk about events, talk about things in their life and who was around at that time, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of like a podcast Comic-Con. It's what you've done and all the achievements you've made, and then your awesome stories that maybe you've never had a chance to tell before about people. And whether they're a name drop or not, we'll ding the bell on your third grade, elementary school. So it's fun just to interact and to understand how, people are such a part of our lives and how they're a part of our stories. And, maybe we're too busy with the story and you don't really focus on the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about the beginning and how this all came about, and the four of us were together. I don't know if you remember that or not. We're at Sweet Stock in Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And we hadn't seen each other in years, and we were on stage, and we were like, wow,
That's literally where this whole thing started?
Yeah. And
we were there for the beginning of your guys' podcast journey?
Yeah.
We were sweating watching this happen.
Oh, was it hot or what? Dude?
I don't think I've ever been so hot in my entire life.
Miserable.
You guys had the good trailer, though. You had all the booze in the trailer.
We had the booze, and there was a little bit of AC in there. But damn, Omaha was hot that day. It was like in the middle of a field, no wind at all. I literally was just sweating buckets out there.
Well, once the show ended, we couldn't wait because we were like, it's dark. Let's go to the bar, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Once the show ended, we thought, we talked about getting together and doing something, and I knew that Chris was in Nashville, and he's like, well, when you get to Nashville, let's do it. I thought it was all drunk talk. I think a couple weeks later, I'm like, I'm here, let's talk, you know, and that's kind of how it all began.
Hey, can I
I thought it
name
was
drop?
all drunk talk till you said you were here, and I was like, oh shit.
I think I remember we were told where the after party was, and then it wasn't there. So I think you guys kind of ditched us, is what I remember.
Yeah, you guys did your own private party.
What happened was you guys walked into the bar and
You guys had security up around you and wouldn't let us get close. I remember that.
Yeah.
Police Academy. Oh my God, that's the best. What was that? Blue Oyster? What was it called?
Blue Oyster Club.
The Blue Oyster Club. Wait, I want to name drop about that weekend. That weekend was a hot one. First time in Nebraska. But of all the groups, we have to say O-Town was actually really nice guys. We enjoyed talking to O-Town.
Yeah, love those
we were
guys.
very surprised by 98 Degrees, how they just didn't interact with anyone, not even for like the other performers. They were just like in and out. I thought that I was like shocked. I was like, really? Like I thought they're like
I was shocked
meshed a little
because
bit.
everyone else was like so interactive, like people running out to the crowd. I remember Chris, you were out in the crowd. I remember Mark McGrath was hanging out with people.
Oh, I love
very
Mark.
chatty behind the scenes. I loved it. I agree. They were like in the back, up on stage, and then out again. And I was like,
you know what I loved about that show? It was like a reunion of sorts for me. I know Chris has been out on the road with the Pop 2K tour, Pop 2000 tour, with a lot of the same guys, and he's been able to do that. But for me, it was like being able to see these guys for the first time. It was kind of an emotional experience. If I didn't have, I feel like if I had like a couple more drinks, I'd probably be like crying on Chris's shoulder. It was awesome.
Brian, you only need to have 2 drinks to cry on my shoulder.
No,
Hey, I'm really feeling saucy. I'm like,
have 2
I've only
drinks
had 2 beers.
pass out.
He's a lightweight.
In the lightweight.
oh, that's so funny. Well, do you guys have any guests coming up on your podcast that we can pitch out, we can tease?
Yeah, Colby Calais got a new album that's dropping, I believe, next week, and we have her on the show.
She's a cool one.
Yeah, she's amazing. She looks great too. Song's great. She just did this new single with Sheryl Crow. We've got O-Town, obviously our boys right there. BB Mac, and then Shake, Jonathan Shake. Who else do we have? I forget. But
me.
Yeah, Chris Kirkpatrick. Ding.
So we are recording this before you drop your first episode, but it's releasing after your first episode. So what is your first episode about?
I think it's very important for us it's about Chris Kirkpatrick and all of his tattoos. I think it's very important for us to talk to Chris because of what just went on. Mm-hmm. Not even just riding on the coattails of what just happened, because we totally are. But I think it's important to hear from him and ask him, the most important question, which are you guys?
I don't answer.
But I'm not going to answer it. And I don't want you to answer it yet, because he gives his answers, and he got pretty emotional, I think, but while giving these answers. And my favorite part was like, it was a very candid interview. That wasn't like Barbara Walters-esque.
How do you say all this stuff with such a straight face? I think you believe your own lies half the time.
I'm just saying, the thing is, I asked him the question that we all want to know. Nsync, who's going on tour with you guys? That kind of thing. But I'm not, right, Chris, don't answer it, because like, I want it to be a surprise. And it's a big surprise for the first episode with, yeah.
Now, Brian, is it hard
to be
for
teased, bro?
Brian, you've interviewed everyone. Is it hard to interview someone who you are such good friends with that you know all the answers to your questions, essentially?
What Chris is different, because you don't know which Chris you're getting, and on top of that too, he's got probably one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. So you ask him a question. I don't like to ask him anything until we get up on we get up on set, because he's that great of a storyteller. It's like, it sucks when you're a great storyteller. You're like, I already told it. Chris doesn't like to tell the same story twice. So you get
so I change it. I make lies.
But yeah, it is. It's hard too, because sometimes you want to ask these questions and personally, like, you probably shouldn't. He'll tell me. Chris, he doesn't hold back. He'll be like, dude, stop.
Who's the one person you are like, we need to get on our podcast? We want to hear the stories.
Definitely. Who?
Garth Brooks.
Garth Brooks. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, you're both in Nashville. Who do you guys see? Who do you run into? Like, have you seen Garth Brooks in Nashville? Have you seen Taylor in Nashville?
Yeah.
Are you friendly with that? Garth, I've never met Garth, but from what I've heard, he's super nice.
Yeah, amazingly nice.
Yeah, he's like incredibly nice.
His wife is probably even nicer too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Garth is one of the sweetest. Probably the sweetest person I've ever met in this industry.
Really? What makes him so kind?
He's the guy that can walk into a restaurant or a bar and nobody would know it's him. I've never met a chameleon like this. He can blend into any. It's unbelievable unless he's wearing his cowboy hat.
I was gonna say, does he just take off his hat and then no one recognizes him?
He goes to Fenwick's. Yeah. He goes to Fenwick's in Berry Hill all the time with.
He wears a mustache.
Good friends, and nobody comes up to the table. They don't just walk by him. Nothing. What's that?
He dresses up as Chris Gaines and he goes everywhere.
You know who I think really blends in a room, who I saw at a party. He was like, "That's him." And you might think I'm an idiot for this, but Kenny Chesney. Without the hat, like he walked into a room, I was like, "Oh, that's Kenny Chesney." Like he, granted, this was a big celebrity party, but I had no idea that was him. He kind of did not stand out, and not in a bad way. He just kind of, without the uniform on, he just
kind of a little guy. Yeah.
You know who I always can't believe it. If I see it at a party, I'm like, "That's him," and blends in amazing is Shaquille O'Neal. Like, he walks in and you're like, "Wait, that's him?" There's no way. I thought that was just some normal dude.
Yeah,
I was surprised too, like hanging out with Chris, because I remember hanging out with the guys from when it was Nsync in the 2000s and going to like events with Chris or games or hanging out at restaurants. People come up to Chris and it's never about Nsync. It's always about the shows that he just recently did. And my son, this is probably the biggest name drop of all time. My son freaked out because he found out that Chris is the voice of Chip Skylark.
He just lost his marbles.
What's that?
I said he lost his marbles finding that out.
Freaked out because he didn't care if it was Nsync because we're old. But he was like fangirling the fact that Chris was like this cartoon. He goes, Chris could probably go to any college town and have drinks for free if he wanted to, just because he was Chip Skylark.
That's so funny. I love it. Well, you guys, thank you so much for joining us. And for anyone, highly recommend go check out Name Drop, their new podcast, anywhere you want to download your podcast, and listen to it, give them feedback. Obviously, we talk about how important reviews are for people. Go leave them some reviews, what you feel like. And it's always very helpful as a podcaster to hear back from the fans. So I love hearing your guys' stories. I'm excited to hear more name dropping all over your guys' podcast and hear your stories that, we've got a lot of great stories out of both of you because we've had you guys both on solo episodes throughout the years. So if you want to listen to Bryan's episode or Chris's episode, we've had you guys on. Great stuff there. So highly, highly encourage you guys to check out those ones as well. But thank you guys for coming and chatting and having a just good time. I know you guys are both busy, so we appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means a lot.
Always good time talking to those guys. I like people that just kind of keep it real and just have fun. And they're still having fun.
100%, dude. I like the concept of the podcast. I think it's the stories that we love the most on our show when people talk about parties and run-ins. I love it. So creating an entire podcast around it, just no brainer in my mind. I love it.
Yeah, I love when people I love when people banter about some of the cool things that have happened to them. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to sometimes talk about those stories with people because I think internally for me, I don't want to come off like a douche, but people love hearing those stories. I think it's internal. Sometimes I know. But don't you ever feel like that? Don't you ever feel weird talking about some of the cool experiences you've done because you don't want to feel like you're bragging? It's almost like, you are a fan, number one. Number two, you worked hard to earn your spot in the room. And
you just want to enjoy it. I think that's why the podcast has been fun for me is because these are stories that I don't tell anyone. You know what I'm saying? Like we talk about them. We've now had the ability to talk about all these fun moments because we know people want to hear them, but I don't ever talk about this stuff. I don't walk up to a friend and say, oh, guess what? Let me tell you about this time at Katsuya when, John Mayer came up to me. Like I don't do that in normal life. So getting to do that on this podcast has been really fun.
Yeah, but those guys, I think they got a good thing going on with their podcast. So thank them for coming on the podcast. Thank you guys for watching on YouTube. If you're listening, thank you. Leave a review. Best thing to do to support this podcast. Follow us on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Facebook. We have a private Facebook group called Off the Record, which I highly suggest you guys join. Follow me at Adam Glyn. Follow Dax Holt at Dax Holt. And we'll see you guys later.
Bye.
What's up, guys? If you like that video, there's plenty more where that came from.
Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell so we can just feed you all the goodness daily.
Hurry up. Come on, let's go.